Imagine you were a colonist writing the Declaration of Independence. That must have been hard. You'd have to think about the colonists, what they wanted, how they wanted it, and having to speak for all the colonists. You go to the First Continental Congress meeting in 1774 and talk about how King George III isn't so great to the colonists. You think if this keeps up, you should have a second meeting, the Second Continental Congress. Later that year, you have a second meeting, the Second Continental Congress. You have to do something. Now, this meeting started one of the most famous documents in U.S. history, the Declaration of Independence. In January 1776, Thomas Paine wrote a pamphlet called Common Sense, stating a new idea, freedom. His pamphlet was really popular and influential. Thomas Paine believed in independence from Great Britain. He went against the king and had a revolutionary way of thinking about the government. His pamphlet also stated some ideas of why the king was wrong. In June 1776, Thomas Jefferson wrote the first draft of the Declaration of Independence, a document stating they wanted freedom. It was inspired by a person named John Locke. John Locke believed in freedom. This document took 17 days to write. It must have taken a lot of hard work. Jefferson thought John Adams should write the Declaration of Independence, but Adams thought Jefferson should write it. Adams said he was known as blunt and argumentative, and he was unpopular. On June 28, 1776, the Continental Congress presented it to Congress. On July 2, 1776, all states voted yes. It was unanimous. On July 4th, they signed and celebrated. One of the most famous lines of the Declaration of Independence, all men created equal. Most of the men who signed this owned slaves and didn't give them up. Jefferson owned about 200 slaves. Patrick Henry wrote a letter to his friends saying, "Would anyone believe I am the master of slaves of my own purchase? I will not, I cannot justify it," meaning that he owned slaves but believes in their freedom. This line doesn't mean everyone is free. It means gentlemen or rich white men were free. On July 5th, 1776, copies were sent. John Dunlap printed about 200 copies. They were sent all over the Americas and even Great Britain. The king wasn't so happy about this. He even pretended it didn't exist. When George Washington read it to his troops, they started cheering. A mob of patriots went and smashed a statue of King George III. There are four parts of it. First, there was the introduction. It said if you were going to declare independence, you should explain why. The second part, or the preamble, says the most famous line, "All men created equal." It explains that we are born with certain rights and we should be able to do them. The third part, the body, states all the wrongs that the king had done at the time. To wrap it up, they have the fourth part. The conclusion says that all the colonies are free and they will choose their own government and have a right to do so. The Declaration of Independence was printed on parchment and was really popular throughout the Americas. To conclude, this document showed we had the right to freedom, and I don't know what would happen if we didn't have it.